Page 279 continued. Revival of drama. English drama in the early 19th century. Quote, from the dramatic point of view, the first half of the 19th century was almost completely barren. Many of the major poets had tried drama, but none of them had achieved any success. The greater part of their work never saw the stage, unquote, says Albert. The professional theatre of the period was in a low state. Among the respectable middle classes it was despised as a place of vice. Audiences did nothing to raise the standard, which remained deplorably low. The popular forms of drama of the day were melodramas, farces, and sentimental comedies, which had no literary qualities whatever, were poor in dialogue and negligible in characterization, and relied for their success upon sensation, rapid action, and spectacle. Rise of the realistic drama. Toward the middle of the century, there can be traced a significant development from romantic and historical themes to more realistic themes, and this movement toward realism received considerable impetus from the work of T. W. Robertson, Robertson, 1829–71, a writer of comedies who introduced in his plays the idea of a serious theme underlying the humor and characters and dialogue of a more natural kind. He is inseparably connected with the modern revival of English drama. Robertson, however, did little more than point the way, and he never entirely freed himself from the melodrama and sentimentalism prevalent at the time. His chief plays were Society, Caste, and School. The same limitations affected the more serious work of Henry Arthur Jones and, to a less extent, the plays of Sir A. W. Pinero, Pinero. These dramatists did much to introduce naturalism into English drama. Their names are also associated with the rise of the new comedy of manners, a genre which had languished since the days of Sheridan. The new drama of ideas. It was not until the 90s, when the influence of Ibsen was making itself strongly felt and Shaw produced his first plays, that the necessary impetus was there to use the serious drama for a consideration of social, domestic, or personal problems. A period so keenly aware of social problems was an admirable time for the rise of the drama of ideas, and the themes of drama became the problems of religion, of youth and age, of labor and capital, and above all, now that Ibsen had torn down the veil which had kept the subject in safe obscurity, of sex, unquote, page 280, according to Albert. In the history of the naturalistic drama, Ibsen and then Shaw, Galsworthy and Granville Barker were of paramount importance, and they did much to create a tradition of natural dialogue. New psychological investigations increased the interest in character as distinct from plot, and the realistic drama of our period aimed at the impartial presentation of real life, contemporary rather than historical. To begin with, its concern was primarily with the upper classes, and its problems, except in Shaw, were handled discreetly, but gradually it turned to other social evils and became more daring in its themes. The weakness of the new, realistic, drama of ideas, unquote, was its lack of anything to fire the imagination. It lacked poetry in the true sense, and its great danger was that it might degenerate into mere social photography. Greatest dramatists like Shaw and Galsworthy could rise above these limitations. The dramatists of the new school of drama were, however, a small minority, and while they struggled for recognition, melodrama and musical comedy continued to hold the day. It was Ibsen's influence which established the drama of ideas as the popular drama of the early 20th century. It was clear that the future lay with the type of drama. The Irish contribution. Theatrical activity was not confined to London alone. The most important of the theatrical developments outside London was the creation of the Irish National Theatre in Dublin. The idea of a national drama was born in the minds of W.B. Yeats and some of his contemporaries. In 1904, the generosity of Miss Horniman, Horniman, constructed for them the Abbey, Abbey Theatre in Dublin, of which Yeats, Synge, Synge, and Lady Gregory, Gregory, were directors. Of the dramatists who wrote for the theatre, Yeats and Synge looked on the drama as a thing of the emotions, and reacting against realism sought their themes among the legends and folklore and peasantry of Ireland. In their dramas we have poetry in the truest sense, though Yeats' dramatic gifts were limited. In the hands of Synge and Lady Gregory they developed a new comedy. Lady Gregory cultivated a peculiarly Irish drama. Her plays were published as 7 short plays, Irish folk history plays, new comedies, 3 wonder plays, and 3 last plays, A third stream in the Irish drama is represented by the work of Lennox Robinson, who, following the moral realistic trends of the day, wrote realistic plays like The Crossroads, The Lost Leader, etc. Foreign influences. A number of foreign influences did much to bring about a revival of drama. The most important of these influences was that of the Norwegian dramatist Henrik Ibsen, whose work became known in England about 1890 and gave an enormous impetus to the realistic movement, to the deeper study of character, and to the subtler conception of plot and character presentation. More than any other, Ibsen may claim credit for extending the scope of the modern dramatist. No doubt Ibsen's influence was rather late in coming to England, but with the passing of time his treatment of themes and his technical methods came to be fully accepted, and a new spirit and a new enthusiasm overtook the English drama in the early years of the 20th century. Section. Main trends. Realism. It was under Ibsen's influence that serious drama from 1890 onward ceased to deal with themes remote in time or place. Ibsen had taught men that drama, if it was to leave a true of its own, must deal with human emotions, with things near and dear to ordinary men and women. Hence, melodramatic romanticism and the treatment of remote historic themes alike disappeared in favor of a treatment of actual English life, first of aristocratic life, then of middle-class lives, and finally of laboring conditions. So far as choice of subject matter is concerned, the break between the drama of the Romantic period and the naturalistic drama of the late 19th and 20th century is complete. Note of revolt, but difference in subject matter is not all. With the treatment of actual life, the drama became more and more a drama of ideas, which are sometimes veiled in the main action and are sometimes didactically set forth. The ideas were for the most part revolutionary, so that the drama came to form an advanced battleground for a rising school of young thinkers. Revolt took the form of reaction to past literary models, to current social conventions, and to prevailing morality of Victorian England. We thus find that sex occupies by far the greatest place in the new drama. It stands next in importance only to the problem of labor and the problem of youth. Quote, for the new dramatists, parental authority represented the sentimentalism which they were fighting against, semicolon. Capitalism represented the social state which were bent on altering, unquote. Observes Allardyce, Allardyce, Nicole, Nicholl, the spirit of youth liberated, eager to make out on new paths, inspire many of these plays. Page 281. Young men struggle to throw off the trammels of Victorian prejudice. Young women join eagerly the feminist movement and glory in a newfound liberty. Quote, constantly questing, constantly restless and dissatisfied, seem the characters of the plays, especially when they are placed by the side of their predecessors, the placid heroes and clinging heroines of romantic drama, unquote, according to Allardyce, Nicole, para. Scientific treatment of love and sex. Romantic love, too, came in for its particular onslaughts. New investigations into the meaning of sex, which gave to the 19th century the philosophy of Schopenhauer, and to the 20th one of Freud, Freud, brought men to believe no more in love as it was expressed by their forefathers, but in what Bernard Shaw has styled the life force. With the tearing off OF those veils of prudery with which the Victorians had covered the facts of sex, the new dramatists came to take a definitely scientific view of life. Social conventions, common standards of existence, seemed as nothing compared with this tremendous fact. Anne tracks down the father of her children in Man and Superman, and her sister Anne Leeds, Leets, in Granville Barker's play, throws over Lord John Carp for the plebeian John Abbott, Abud. Para. Treatment of class war. Increasingly, the dramatists love to make life and nature play their great parts on the stage. The desire for liberty in domestic and in moral circles was paralleled by the desire for liberty in social life. Suddenly, the playwrights became aware of the depressing circumstances in which the poor are fated to dwell, semicolon. They viewed the squalor and the misery of the cities, semicolon. They looked around and saw the terror of modern civilization, unquote. The class war, which has found its expression in actual life, was freely dealt with by the newer school, cynically yet profoundly by men such as Bernard Shaw, seriously by men such as Galsworthy. Lack of action, para. Quote, being a drama of ideas, the modern theatre tended to become more static, unquote. The necessity of expressing in the 3 hours traffic of the stage a multitude of diverse theories and points of view seriously interfered with the action of many plays. Inner conflict was substituted for outer conflict, and drama became quieter than had been the melodramatic romantic theatre of previous years. This development was a normal one. It only betokens the gradual progress by which the drama kept abreast of changing conditions. This inner quality of the modern theatre was intensified greatly by the recent investigations of psychologists. The new study of the quote, soul, S-O-U-L unquote, interested many, and none more than the dramatists. In their place, therefore, they sought evermore subtly and delicately to depict the most intricate aspects of the human spirit. Symbolism. In many ways, this inwardness is connected with another marked development in the new dramatic art. To express these almost inexpressible ideas, emotions, instincts which the psychologists have defined for us, the new writers found that ordinary direct words were insufficient. This accounts for the extensive use of symbolism in modern drama. The dramatists found precisely the same difficulty which faced the mystics of countless centuries before, and they came to employ the same methods for the explaining of their purposes. Stop quote. Where direct enunciation was impossible or unsatisfactory, they had recourse to symbolism. Stop. The symbolism in itself aided in realizing the dark and even sordid themes chosen by the dramatists to artistic levels they otherwise could not have reached. Stop unquote. The white horses in Rosmersholm, Rosmershholm, the roaring waters in Masefields, Mascfield', Nun, Nan, the waves dashing in ceaseless fury through Singer's Riders on the Sea, all give unity and universality to the various tragedies in which they appear. Quote, perhaps the dramatists are not fully conscious of the end at which they would aim in introducing these things, but consciously or unconsciously they are employing one of the surest means of raising apparently sordid subject matter onto a higher and truly tragic plane, unquote, says Allardyce Nicholl. Social forces as dramatic personages, with the increased inwardness, must be accounted to a tendency on the part of some dramatists to make their protagonists not men, but unseen force. Social forces are used as dramatic personages for the purpose of making wider and larger the sphere of drama. This tendency is most pronounced in the plays of Galsworthy. It is one of the chief tendencies which separates the earlier romantic theatre from the later naturalistic play. The new comedy of manners, turning from the drama and tragedy proper to the world of comedy, we find many marked developments in these years. Perhaps that which deserves most attention is the revival of the comedy of manners. Page 282. In many ways, we seem now to be approaching a new Augustan period when reason rather than imagination, common sense rather than romantic nonsense, will dominate life and literature. It cannot be denied that a definite return is being made to the witty, witty, satirical comedy which rose to full flourish with Congreve, Congreve, in 1700. Oscar Wilde, Henry Arthur Jones, and a number of others aided in the revival of this form of comedy. The successful revivals of The Beggar's Opera and The Way of the World seem to mark a certain correspondence in the tastes of public. At times, this new comedy of manners is almost purely fanciful and dependent upon wit for its being, but more frequently it assumes a cynical and bitter tone which corresponds in its own way to the social purpose of more serious playwrights. Para. The note of satire. It is perfectly natural that the age should be satiric. Satire will always flourish in a society which has become over-civilized, where the artificial life rendered necessary to city existence has driven men emotionally and morally to be cut off from elemental conditions and primitive impulses. All signs indicate that this satire will continue to be a marked feature of modern drama. George Bernard Shaw, 1856 to 1950. Para. Bernard Shaw brought about a revolution in the drama by hauling life unceremoniously into the theatre, undeterred by the knowledge that at first he had little idea of what more to do with life, el capital, when he had flung it in a heap on the stage. Yet, if his earliest plays are a mass of raw humanity, the mass is at least strugglingly alive, not ossified by theatrical convention. Shaw came in the traditional, almost penniless condition from Dublin to London in 1876, and through local politics and journalism, imposed himself upon public notice. He then set out to impose himself upon the theatreless out of special liking. He then set out to impose himself upon the theatre less out of special liking for the theatre than out of a moral passion for the establishment of righteousness in social relationships. Therefore, when he dragged life into the theatre, it began at once to talk about housing conditions, religion, finance, prostitution, about everything that Shaw thought to be muddled and mismanaged and pernicious. The public had to be compelled against its will to listen, and no one without Bernard Shaw's impudent wit and humour, pugnaciousness, pertinacity, and Puritan passion could have compelled it to listen. The stage, by Shaw's connivance, became the ventilating shaft of modern civilization. And what splendid, exhilarating fun the ventilating process became. Shaw quickly learned how to organize for stage use the living material he had collected. The interval between widowers, widowers apostrophe houses on the one hand and Candida and You Never Can Tell on the other was a matter of only 2 or 3 years. But in the interval, Shaw developed from a propagandist to a playwright dealing with real problems and nearly real people. In Man and Superman, he presented his philosophic idea of the life force, an animating spirit instilled into man, with the purpose of energizing him to produce a higher type of creature, the Superman as God's coadjutor, coadjutor on earth. Faced by man's inertia and unreadiness to cooperate in the divine plan, the life force is made in Man and Superman to select woman as the more willing instrument in the devisal of means for evolving the Superman. Shaw's conceptions of a life force ran through most of the later plays, coming in fuller development in Back to Methuselah, where it merged into his larger theory of creative evolution, signifying the idea of man made perfect through the conscious development of the will to be made perfect. Bernard Shaw is an inexhaustible subject. Notwithstanding the denials of antagonistic critics, it is certain that he powerfully influenced the thought of a large and increasing body of people in Britain and abroad for fully 60 years, passing buoyantly through a period of embittered opposition, not unlike that encountered by Kipling from a different political direction. Later generations must be left to determine the truth or untruth of the repeated charges that Bernard Shaw was a shallow thinker and a merely destructive critic. There is a good case for the defense in reply to both charges. As a dramatist, Shaw's unmatched abilities lay in his combination of effervescing wit and strong common sense. His probing spirit of inquiry by which he pierced the stoutest hide of humbug, even that of his own admirers, and his dialectical brilliance. His probing spirit of inquiry by which he pierced the stoutest hide, Hide, of humbug, even that of his own admirers, and his dialectical brilliance. St. John comes nearest among Shaw's works to the genuine, Genenil idea of what a good play should be. I think it should be general idea, though it has not the prophetic vision which makes Heartbreak House so memorable. Para. Other playwrights. Bernard Shaw's claim on the attention of his generation derive from the importance of his plays as commentaries upon contemporary affairs, page 283, though at times passes they will almost certainly be seen to have more permanent features than this. The claim of Sir J. M. Barrie, B-A-R-R-I-E, 1860–1937, upon the attention of posterity may, on the other hand, arise from the fact that he eschewed specifically modern problems and dealt in terms of fantasy with men and women in situations as familiar or as unfamiliar, according to the reader's point of view, in one generation as in another. Shaw's unquenchable optimism never permitted him to abandon hope in man's ability and ultimate preparedness to set about the task of producing the Superman. Barrie, in settled pessimism, took refuge from the ugliness of modern life in a world of delicate sentiment and make-believe, which in his plays is entirely consistent with itself and only untenable when criticized, as it should not be, in terms of 20th century dailiness. D-A-I-L-I-N-E-S-S. He did skirt about the edges of a modern problem in the admirable Crichton, C-R-I-C-H-T-O-N, only to fly from its full implications in the last act. Barrie's equipment as a craftsman of the theatre was as full as that of any other dramatist working in his period. As a humorist, he was by turn sunnily human and wryly, W-R-Y-L-Y, disillusioned. While as the author of Peter Pan he completely satisfied the critic in the nursery, the one kind of critic whose judgment is not warped by arbitrary prejudices or mental dyspepsia. Lewis Carroll's creation of Alice in 1865 was one of those strokes of sublime genius that do not occur more than once or twice, and few imaginative exercises can be more refreshing than to consider a meeting of Peter and Alice as companions in Wonderland. Para. Besides those already mentioned, other early 20th century dramatists are less important. John Galsworthy, 1867–1933, wrote 3 excellent plays, Strife, The Silver Box and The Skein Game, compared with which his remaining dramatic works seem hardly more than humanitarian tracts. Harley Granville-Barker, 1877 to 1946, the author of one superlatively good social comedy, The Voysey Inheritance, probably the best naturalistic play of the period, was also a force in the theatre, both as an actor and a producer. Milestones by Arnold Bennett and Edward Knobloch, Knoblock, is a fascinating study in the dynamics of progress and the statics of human stubbornness. While Pompey the Great, The Tragedy of Nan, and Good Friday are among John Mesfield's contributions to modern tragic drama. Para 20th century novelists. For a quarter of a century after Dickens's death, the custody of traditions in the English novel was vested in Meredith and Hardy. None of the writers mentioned in 128 was within the direct tradition. This is some printing mistake. And not until the 1900s did younger writers begin to produce novels sufficiently important to justify hope that the passing of the great Victorians would not prove irreparable. In a backward view, the early fantastic romances of H.G. Wells can be seen in right relation to his entire work. Though at first the Time Machine and its successors in that particular kind seemed scarcely more than amazingly clever frivolities, it is possible to trace in them the early stages of Wells's growth as a critic of institutions and constitutions. Love and Mr. Lewisham, Kipps, Kipps, and The History of Mr. Polly, Polly, established him as a novelist of substantial quality with a special genius for comedy and humanitarian zeal, in the direct line of descent from Dickens. While aware of the real merits of the earlier books, many people ranked Tomo Bungay, T-O-M-O-Bungay, as Wells's best novel. Characterization, narration, description, adventure, the management of these in Tono Bungay earned admiration, and the book is moreover a serious and illuminating study in English social history between, say, 1880 and 1910. The national change of balance from aristocracy to an incongruous combination of democracy and charlatanism is displayed as it appears to the mind of George Ponderevo, Ponderevo, who, though possessing the then new outlook, nevertheless expressed doubts shared by the author himself as to whether even a convinced democrat could view the changed order with equanimity. From 1912 onward, H.G. Wells put into practice more and more his stated theory that the novel should no longer seek merely to entertain, but should serve as a platform for the propagation of ideas and the discussion of any and every topic of contemporary social and political interest. As a consequence, Wells's later novels became an interesting series of elaborated pamphlets, masquerading only half-heartedly as fiction, though for all his sociological and political fervor, the creative literary artist and the master of comic narrative occasionally broke through again, as in Mr. Britling sees it, Britling, sees it through, and in the earlier part of Christiana Alberta's Father, page 284, para. Joseph Conrad Korzinowski, Korzniowski, 1857 to 1924. Joseph Conrad came as a youth from Poland to serve on French and afterwards on British merchant ships, learned the English tongue, was driven from sea life by illness, and settled in England to write in England the best sea stories in our language. See The Nigger of the Narcissus, Typhoon, and others, bracket closed. He disliked being regarded as mainly a writer about the sea, setting a higher value upon his penetrating psychological novels, Chance, for example. He was the first novelist who attempted with success in English to make the novel a work of art in the full and exact sense, following the example of the anglicized American Henry James, whose manner was, however, less robust and vigorous. In cultivating the literary art, Conrad did not abate the tremendous living intensity and spiritual depth which make his novels unique. As a means of conveying intimate aspects of character and revealing subtle shades of truth, Conrad used peculiarly involved and sometimes perplexing narrative method. But any initial difficulty presently by his complexity of form is more than compensated by the rewards of intellectual excitement, quickened perception, and deepened understanding of motives. Lord Jim is as near to the absolute greatness of poetic tragedy as any novel could be, and if victory has to be placed lower when tasted by the same standard, if is because it lacks the austerity of Lord Jim and plunges into exotic romanticism. Conrad's success as an impressionist in words was due to the high value he set upon exactitude of observation and reproduction. His impressionism is never woolly, W-O-O-L-L-Y, or diffused, but is always the, quote, calculated outcome of a precise style, a unifying idea, as well as a theory of art, runs through Conrad's novels and tells, the imperative need for loyalty to a human principle, There is no unquote sign. The imperative need for loyalty to a human principle. On the sea, men are united by the ever-larking threat of a contingent common peril, the anger and treachery of the ocean. Against this enemy, human solidarity must be maintained. There must be no breaking or betrayal of that solidarity. Or, if there is, as there was by Lord Jim, atonement must be made after travail. The idea of human solidarity, the phrase has now a political significance, rarely applicable to Conrad, is insistent in all his work and is accompanied by the complementary ideal of fidelity in all human relationships. Mention of the old wives' tale, clay hanger, and Riceman, Riceyman steps by Arnold Bennett and the Forsyte, Forsyte saga by Galsworthy rounds off the list of major traditional novels in this period. These two writers gave in the books named large-scale pictures of different social strata in modern England. Arnold Bennett of the typical middle class in trade and industry, Galsworthy of the professional and aristocratic classes. Their respective literary styles corresponded with their subject matter. Bennett's was efficient, workmanlike, middle-class prose. Galsworthy's graceful and suave. Arnold Bennett also wrote, among much else of less merit, at least one first-rate humorous novel, Buried Alive, afterwards dramatized with success as The Great Adventure. William D. Morgan, after spending the main part of his life in designing and manufacturing ceramics, decorated tiles and pottery, turned to novel writing while recovering from an illness. Thereafter, during his last 11 years, he produced 9 long novels. The first 3, Joseph Vance, Vance 1906, Alice for Short 1907, Somehow Good 1908 are the best, and though the wrote in the tradition of the printing mistake is there. Though he wrote on the tradition of the great Victorian novelist he had read in the years before pottery became his chief concern, D. Morgan was far more original than derivative and excelled in both humor and controlled pathos. Stop.